please welcome my guest for this evening, Peony.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Jay.
Hi, Peony. Welcome on in. Well, I'm sure most folks out there are probably already familiar with you, but for anyone who might not be, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes. Hello. My name is Peony. I'm an opossum. I live in a dumpster behind a taco establishment, and I love to hang out in the dumpster with my litter bugs and play video games and eat garbage and have a good old time.
Yes, indeed. Got a whole bunch of litter bugs in chat. I don't know if I mentioned, I've always enjoyed your vest, shall we say?
Yeah.
The thank you vest. That's such a classic thing. I don't know if it's, I assume it's mostly just in America. I'm not sure if they have that as a thing in Canada, but I feel like that's a type of bag. Everyone has seen that before, and I really appreciate that. It's such an iconic, fun little touch. So I do enjoy that.
Yeah, I love my what I call my trash couture look of my best little items that are little callbacks to different articles of plastic and knickknacks and trash that people just throw out, and you can make it fashionable.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I rarely ask about people's designs because I feel like it's sort of low-hanging fruit. A lot of other shows do it, but I'm very curious in specific, what are the two pins?
So I have my heart with my my playing dead possum, and then I have a soda bottle cap.
Okay, so it's just a bottle cap.
Mm-hmm.
Is that from anything in particular, or just a little accessory that you decided to add on, as trash couture?
I added it on just because it matches.
Mm,
Mm-hmm. I like I said, the whole theme is my recyclable, thrown away items, and just make it look good.
yeah, and you most certainly do.
Thank you.
Well, for folks who were here before we started the show, they probably noticed some music, and the music we have right now actually is from the same source, and that is the Neverhood. And I will admit, until about 2 hours ago, I was unfamiliar with the Neverhood.
Really?
I was talking to Peony before the show, being like, hey, did you have any music you wanted me to set up? And she mentioned the Neverhood, and I found those pieces, or rather, she directed me to the one we're listening to now, and I had found the main theme, which is a bit more frantic and a bit too frantic for a talk show BGM. But I was like, this is still really fun. So let's just put it as the starting soon screen.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I
You're
looked
in
up
for
the
a
game.
treat. Yeah.
I looked it up. I looked up its history, and I looked up the plot. And oh boy, starting from the top, this is a claymation game from '96.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This was like one of the first games I played on stream when I first started streaming, and I actually got like the worst ending possible. So I do want to go back and do like another full playthrough of it. But oh, it's such a treat. It's like gorgeous. It's like clay animation, classic clay animation. I love finding like when you get those video games that have that classic clay animation, like the clay fighters, and like just like the use of like stop motion was like it feels very 90s. You don't see like the claymation specifically as much
Heck, you barely saw it in the '90s. It was already a rarity. You don't see it used very often because it takes a lot of effort. Stuff like Wallace and Gromit and Nightmare Before Christmas, those productions took years to put together because it is literal frame by frame in a way that is somehow more painstaking and slow than actual cell by cell animation.
Oh my gosh. If you love stop motion animation, I feel like we are like at a good, like it's not as frequently used because it's not like Rankin Bass like levels of use, but like the Leica Studios is actually there's been some really good films from that studio, and like there's been not outside of like Netflix has been like funding a lot of stop motion recently. There's the Guillermo del Toro stop motion Pinocchio. There's Wendell and Wild that came out in October. That was from the actual director of Nightmare Before Christmas, not Tim Burton. Tim Burton pretty much just put his name on it, but like what's his name, like if anyone knows in chat what I'm talking about, but
Yes,
I think
please.
it's Chris.
Because I'm always forgetting. It was like Elfman just did the music. He didn't
Yeah,
have a
Elfman
hand in the
did the music.
direction.
Tim Burton pretty much just like had an idea for a story and threw his name on it, but
Sigrid and Bird in chat. If you like stop motion, the game Harold Halibut looks crazy. Been in dev for a million years. Henry Selick,
Ooh.
thank you.
Henry Selick, thank you, XX Live. But yeah, that sounds really, really fun too. Like I feel like I've heard about Harold Halibut, but I didn't know it was still in production. That's crazy. I know there was like a little demo game I played recently. Oh, I forget what it was called, but it was also stop motion. And it was like a point and click adventure, like it was like a modern take on like a point and click adventure, but with claymation. And it just feels like it was very of like that 90s, like 2000s era with like type of games, like specifically 90s, like point and click adventures.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
And that's actually the type of game that the Neverhood is. It's a point and click adventure.
Mm-hmm.
If you look it up on YouTube, the game can be played through in about 2.5 hours. And you mentioned that you got the bad ending. I think there's only 2. From what I understand, there's only one really big choice in the game, and that's near the end. I won't spoil it.
Yeah.
But this game is not made for kids, for starters. That this is a very adult game, but also it's an existential game. Just reading through the blurb, and I'm sure that it's much more intense actually playing through it, that I was only able to scrub through a couple minutes of gameplay footage to sort of familiarize
it has like, it's very like kind of almost, it's very surreal.
Yeah.
And it has, but it's very goofy still, so it doesn't feel like as like heavy as you might think. But I also really feel like there's like this there's this portion of the game that's like a hallway, and it just literally is like a never-ending hallway of nothing but lore written on the wall. And it's like a whole book's worth of lore just put in this game where you walk through a hallway and you can read it if you wanted to. It's really fascinating. And there's been there's for the same studio did like Skull Monkeys, which is a PS1 claymation game. And then they had a Kickstarter game in the 2010s that was like basically like a spiritual sequel to I'm not sure if it's a direct sequel or a spiritual sequel, but it was called ARKHAND. So like there's that whole catalog I can go through eventually. I'm hoping.
And the creator was also someone who has done a lot of different works over the years, and one of their bigger ones being they did the Nickelodeon show Cat Scratch, which I forget which years it was. It wasn't a mainstay, but it's one that it lasted a couple of years. And hey, if you're getting any airtime on Nickelodeon, you've done something right.
Oh yeah. I'm actually not familiar with Cat Scratch. That might be a deep cut for me.
Yeah, I think it was 2005 to 7-ish, and I'm only remembering that because I was looking at the Wikipedia page about 45 minutes ago or something. But I had to do a double take, and it wasn't Cat Dog, it was Cat Scratch. But it's... Oh, yeah, and they also created Earthworm Jim, and you can definitely see that in the eyes of the characters, that they have the crazy mismatched sized eyes.
Yeah, I actually that's kind of the first time I've heard that he did Earthworm Jim, but I feel like that should be apparent to me. That's so cool though, because that's a really, really neat little connection there. Okay, so Skull Monkeys is direct sequel. So Skull Monkeys is a sequel, and then ARKHAND must have been maybe a prequel or a spiritual sequel.
Neverhood cinematic universe or game universe.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely, so there's like one choice at the end, which honestly we didn't get to. What happened was you can't really die in the game, but there was one spot where it's like literally tells you like, don't do this, and I did it anyways, and it
of course.
The only death in the game. The only way to die in the game, and that's how I got the worst possible ending ever. And I didn't save that entire stream. So I was like, you know what, we'll just call it here for now. We'll come back to this game at another time. So it's been at least, like, oh my gosh, I've been streaming for 2 years now? We gotta go back. We gotta go back to the Neverhood. I gotta finish it for real.
Yeah, just a wild, wild looking game. And that you mentioned that you really enjoy older ones, that some of your favorites are actually PS2 era indie games, and that's
Mm-hmm.
well after where the Neverhood lands. At the Neverhood, I guess, being 96, that would technically put it. Is that still SNES era? And that would be like even pre PS1, I think.
Yeah, I
I feel
think
like
it's around
PS1
there.
was. Now I need to look this up. When was PS1
Yeah,
released?
I gotta remember. I feel like that was a 97 or something, right? Or
Oh
am
no,
I
wait.
thinking?
PS1 was December 3rd, 1994. So this was in the
Oh,
PS1
wow.
era. I didn't realize it was that far back. Released in North America on the 9th of September 95, so about a year later, but still before the Neverhood. But this is earlier days.
Yeah.
God, 30 years. Oh no. Oh no.
My bones, my bones.
I'm not. I've been pretty open that I'm on the older side of this community at about 30 years myself, and I'm not so old that I was playing this game in 94, but I was alive in 94, so.
But I love going back to like older games. But I honestly, so I love kind of the renaissance of indie games that are mimicking the looks of older games now, and I've been really into like a lot of games like that recently, as opposed to going back to like some classic titles. I do want to kind of return to classic titles eventually, but I don't know, it's just so much cool stuff has been coming out in the indie game scene. Like specifically I'm thinking of like New Blood, developers and their whole library of games that have like that PS1 graphics to it, but also like more like quality of life kind of controllers and such.
Mm. Yeah, that's been a really cool thing to see. And just over the years, one of the really nice things for the indie scene as a whole is, well, frankly, the viability of the indie scene. That if you rewind the clocks to 94, 96, that if you didn't have a publisher, if you didn't have the backing of some large company, and frankly, just the distribution, the physical distribution network to get your game to market, you weren't going to get a game to market. Couldn't do it. That if you were, the closest thing you would have at that point in time is put your game on a floppy disk, put your game on a CD, pass it around, hope people burn it, and that it gets spread around that way. But that's not reliable. That's not going to be able to be a business. But really, sort of, as weird as it is to say, starting with phone games, starting with the iPhone, and being able to have folks make things on the App Store and just upload and distribute that way. But then more recently with Steam and just itch.io and the advent of both cloud gaming, but also just digital and download gaming in general, it means that you no longer have to have that big either publisher or distribution network that just, if you can make a game, you can upload it and people can play it. And there's all these different options, and then also just the tools to make these games are much more accessible. And that means that we have so many more games out there. And the only bad part of it is there's so many games out there that you can't keep up with all of them, but it means that there's always fun things to find.
Yes, I love looking for like just going to like itch.io and just like going to like itch.io horror games are always like a little treat, you know? It's like, is it gonna be an absolute banger, or is it gonna be like keep it in the trash, you know? Because it's like, especially like with horror games specifically, with the boom of YouTube reactions to horror games, like it's like people are like, well, I want my game to be instantly seen, like maybe Markiplier will pick it up or something on stream, and so they'll just like put out whatever, and there's like a lot of bad ones, but there's also some really good stuff, and it's just really fun to play around with.
Yeah, and just inevitably that you're going to have, like you said, a lot of stuff that isn't so great, but that's part of the learning process as well, that the developers of tomorrow are going to have to do something today. And even if the initial entries that they make, the early games they released, aren't that good, that means they're learning. It means they're trying, and that's a good thing. And all right, we might rag on them a bit today, but they're hopefully going to improve and be able to make something even better tomorrow.
Yeah.
Also, Celeste Kantz, thank you for the follow. I also missed Prismea, and yes, yeah, there we go. Thank you for the follows. Welcome on in. And yes, Cuddly Muffin Top, you do indeed hear Neverhood. This was actually at Peony's recommendation. And Abra Original, thank you for the follow.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Are there any, so for PS2 era, and you mentioned in particular PS2 era indie games that obviously, PS2 era And that was one of the big consoles of all time that for a while, PS2, just in terms of unit sales, was atop the list for a while.
Yeah. That's honestly the if you look at the library for PS2, like it's got a longer shelf life than like the majority of other consoles. Like specifically, I think it was like PS2, because like when did that first come out? It was like early 2000s, and it didn't like
Yeah.
the PS3 didn't come out until way later.
And
So
part of the
compared,
appeal of the PS2
yeah,
was that it was a DVD player. And at that point in
yeah,
time, it was one of the cheaper ones on the market. That also, I think, sort of parallel in the next generation, PS3 having Blu-ray and
yeah, that
being
was
basically the cheapest Blu-ray player on the market, I think it was a non-zero factor in why Blu-ray won that format war over HD
oh yeah.
DVD, because PS3 was out there, and that if you had that console, that you had the Blu-ray player, which at that point in time was really expensive. It was difficult to get.
Yeah, that's actually it was I remember that being like a big selling point for the PS3, like to get a Blu-ray player. Even though like physical media means nothing
Yeah,
anymore.
nowadays, like Blu-ray, how on earth is it still around? And just
Yeah.
as I
I'm
glance
always
over,
shocked when I'm like at a random store and I see like a Blu-ray set of Stranger Things. It's like, wait, that's a Netflix show. What is that doing on shelves here?
like I
It's always
enjoy,
weird to see.
yeah, and I have still a good amount of DVDs and Blu-rays, not a ton. I've always been the type just to buy something physical media if I really, really enjoy it, that I know I want to be able to just have it on hand, not have to worry. But now I'm at the point, the bigger problem is, well, does my machine have a DVD player or Blu-ray player built in? It's actually gotten to the point where the media isn't the problem, it's the player that's the problem.
Yes, I actually, because I build my own computer, and Litterbugs know exactly how terrible I am at building PCs, because I've had like a long history of uh PC issues on stream. But I never put in like any type of disk reader in it, so it's like a lot of like I have copies of older games, like of like some of my favorite older games, like American McGee's Alice, and like I have an original 2001 copy of that from my childhood. But it's like I can't play it through that method unless I were to actually go out and buy the part and then figure out how to install it and everything. So I actually end up going to like digital versions of like preserved digital versions of retro titles. I do try to stick with actual, when I can, the actual consoles. Like I have a capture card specifically for like my PS2, and then I have a couple other consoles that will hopefully get into the rotation soon. But yeah, for like specifically like PC games, that's where I'm having running into issues with being able to like play it on modern hardware and everything without it like totally crashing my whole computer.
That is one of the nice advantages of just running a talk show. I don't need to worry about a capture card. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to have to, not for a capture card, but the last charity marathon stream that I have to pay off is I do need to play Elden Ring. I'm just going to get that on Steam, so not worrying about a capture card. But the fact that I, except for special occasions, don't play games on the channel is admittedly one thing that I sort of, after the fact, realized, oh, I just sort of sidestepped that headache. That was nice.
Yeah, that was like when I first started streaming. My go-to actually was I wanted to do specifically PS2 games when I started. So I like that was my big thing when I started streaming, which I don't recommend this. If you can get away, just play with your Steam games on. It saves you a lot of headache and saves you some money. If you're deciding you want to get into streaming and you're like, oh, what kind of games do I want to play? Just do an emulator or do Steam.
Yeah,
But
do
if
an emulator for starters, and then maybe build your way up to
yeah,
capture card and other things along the way. Don't make more trouble for yourself than you need to
yeah.
when you're starting.
Yeah, because I went ahead and I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and buy me my capture card, and I got the one that you specifically was not like the plug and play ones. It's like the one that you had to like install into your. Well, because I heard it was better quality, so I was like, I'm gonna do that. So I mean, I haven't had issues with that portion, honestly. It's always been issues with like graphics cards and stuff, but like I did it specifically because like my idea was I was going to I'm gonna do like my PS2 games. I'm gonna go through all my library of my PS2 games, and then that's when it started. Like I started getting quote unquote lazy with capture cards, and I just started going towards like indie games I could find on like Steam and itch.io and stuff.
Mm. Are there any games from that era, regardless if you've been able to stream them or not, that were particularly formative or just hold a very fond place in your heart?
What, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Are there any particular games for PS2, regardless of if you've been able to stream them or not, that hold a really fond place in your heart?
Yes, there's one game in particular I would love to be able to stream, but rhythm games are super hard for me to stream. I want to play Space Channel 5 so bad on stream, but a lot of like older rhythm games you have to have perfect timing for, and they didn't adjust for input lag on modern screens. Obviously, that's not something that you have to have like an older.
The whole CRT TV
Yeah, the
type
CRT
of thing.
TV. And I've been having the worst luck finding one now. I've been looking at like charity shops, thrift shops, like every place I could look.
We're officially at the point where it's not even retro anymore. It's just difficult to find because I remember even rewind the clocks like a decade that CRT TVs were the standard if you were going to be doing something like fighting games because you didn't want even a frame of lag if you could help it.
Yeah,
and
I know, like,
that
the
a lot
Smash
of folks
Brothers community has like
that the Melee community was really big on that, and that you had a lot of folks picking them up for that specific reason. Meanwhile, they were being phased out of active production, and now we're just enough removed that it's really difficult to find them. That for a while they were really easy to find because they were the cheap models. They were the ones that were being wholesaled, or just people are trying to get them off shelves as they were being phased out. But now, since they're just far enough removed, you can't find them anywhere, so their prices are actually now going up again, and they're becoming super expensive because not only is it a question of can you find one, but can you find one that is still working? And can you find one that is still working that someone is willing to part with?
Oh man, I found my dream TV actually recently, but it's a perfectly cute little CRT TV. It would be perfect size for my desk without having to worry about like a monstrous heavy thing, and it's got the clear that good 2000s clear plastic look to it.
Ooh.
It was in a vintage shop and it was going for $200, and I couldn't believe that. But I'm honestly so tempted to go back and get it because I can't find anything like that.
If anything, I would just say, pick it up now and have it and use it, and just make sure you keep it in good condition, because I'm sure you could probably just flip and sell it for at least the majority of what you paid for it down the line. That if it's still working, you'll probably be able to find another buyer.
That, like, I don't know, specifically like the clear plastic is oh my god, that's so good.
You every so often see posts on social media of just people reminiscing nostalgia over that very specific aesthetic for technology. That it was on everything from like Mad Catz controllers. There were Game Boys that had those of just that, like you said, that clear sort of different colored plastic, and that you were able to then see the circuit boards, and that was really cool and techy because it was like, ooh, look at all this circuitry and stuff. It's futuristic. We're living in the future.
PS2 control that I'm on my PS2 control. I'm looking because I got my PS2 right here on my desk, and it is like a beautiful like clear green color, and it's like this would be actually probably. I wonder if I can look it up and see how hard those are to find now, because it's so beautiful looking. I love that clear. I always associate like the clear plastic specifically with. I had that atomic purple Game Boy. That is like my favorite.
Yes,
color.
I know exactly what you mean.
It's so good. I know they make Switch cases that come like that now, and I'm really tempted to do like a case swap just to have that aesthetic.
I hope we get a resurgence of that style, because that's one thing that went out of vogue for sure, that it became a thing and then it was no longer cool because it became overused, and then circular nature of trends and whatnot, that we're back to where it is now, nostalgic, and people want it again. That fortunately the tech and that type of plastic isn't like difficult to make or manufacture. It's just people stopped making it because the demand went down. But it feels like if we get this even grassroots demand up to a reasonable level, that we can see this type of thing being made actively again.
I could probably see like a smaller company making like a small company making like short stock of like limited presses of like certain tech like that, like maybe like limited, like what was it, like you know how like when the Polaroid camera went out and you
Yep,
had
and
like
now it's back again. Same with
yeah,
vinyl.
yeah, and then you had like I remember when the Polaroid camera went out, like I remember like some stores started popping up online that would sell like they took over whatever factories they could and like started selling like the film specifically because it was going to not be produced anymore, so they jumped on that. But
We'll
I
probably
could
see
see
that for
something like
CRT
that.
TVs,
Yeah,
actually.
that would be so good.
Because, the tech for CRT TVs is still going to be as cheap as ever, probably, that it's not as high in demand, so it actually might be a little bit more expensive to produce, but it's not like it's extinct tech, that this can be done again.
Yeah, but I like, and like I mentioned, they got the clear plastic cases for like Switch. I could see it coming back for other things, like maybe phone cases or I would love to get. I honestly, my dream PC case would be like something that looked like the atomic purple that you could just see through, and it'd be so nice.
I feel like RGB lighting is the modern version of that type of plastic.
Yeah.
And it's just people like that because you can make it all of the colors or any of the colors instead of just one. But I think it's that same, the frankly simple, visceral, pretty colors make brain go burr.
Yeah, I am guilty. I'm totally guilty of that when I first built my PC, of just like, ooh, rainbow lights, let's go. Like, I know that's so generic, but I ended up switching it to like a nice like purple white aesthetic to match like me. But I have been guilty of just like, ooh, pretty lights go burr, make my head feel good.
Yeah. So you mentioned rhythm games. Remind me the title of the one specific game again.
The Space Channel 5. That one's so fascinating. Okay, so the Space Channel 5 actually has like not hit the legit Michael Jackson in it, but the character is Space Michael. It has a Space
Legally
Michael
distinct
Jackson.
Michael.
Really distinct Michael. The original character Ulala, she's the main protagonist of the
Oh my
Space
gosh,
Channel
I'm looking this up on Google right now. Just
5. You
images.
should.
Oh boy, this is that 1999 future aesthetic of
It's like
this was the original version of the e-girl. This is the original, just the
yeah.
cyber girl type of thing where it's the headset, because headsets are futuristic, and they're in a space station. This thing, and it's 3D CG. This is wild. One sec, I'm actually gonna look at the image so I can put up on screen. So when did you first play this game?
That would have been back in the day. It was originally, I think, a Dreamcast release that eventually got ported over PS2, so I didn't play it until it was like a PS2 port, and it probably would have been like years later. But the interesting thing about like Ulala herself, she is based on the main singer from D-Light. I don't know if you've had to have heard "Groove Is in the Heart." But
yes, I'm familiar with the piece, not with the group.
Yeah, so if you look up like the main singer, what is her name, Lady Miss Kier, that's who Ulala was based off of. But apparently, Sega approached D-Light to make a video game with them. This is the story. I'm not 100% sure if it's true, but they approached D-Light to make a video game with them. It didn't go through, and then Lady Miss Kier actually ended up suing them later on because they used her image. That's the rumor story. I'm not 100% sure if that's true or not, but I always thought that was a fascinating story. Like, and it makes sense if they have like other musicians in the game. Maybe they weren't able to get like everybody to like likeness, like rights to their likenesses and things.
So I have here on screen one of the images from Space Channel 5, and this, like I said, this is peak late 90s, early 2000s future sci-fi CG aesthetic. I love it.
Yeah, that might actually, the image you have on screen might actually even be from like a more modern adaptation of it. I'm
I
pretty
can
sure they
believe
made like a
it.
VR Space Channel 5 game like a few years ago, which I've been
Oh,
meaning to check
okay.
out.
So what was the style of this? Because there's a lot of different ways that rhythm games work. That there's DDR, there's the sort of classic controller inputs. There was Donkey Konga, and that's one of my favorite rhythm games
Yeah.
from back in the day,
So
Donkey Konga.
it was very Simon Says, like you would, so it's the Ooh La La, the main protagonist is a space reporter and she's on the scene getting the scoop. And there's aliens invading and they're very cute little aliens. They look like little TV aliens. They're very, very adorable. And every time they would say something, she would repeat it back and do a dance move and save the day by dancing.
As you do.
Yes, of course. But
Yeah,
that's one of those games that's like I want to play it so desperately on stream because it does have like a lot of nostalgia for me, and like I love this the setting and the aesthetic of it, but because of input lags, it's just it's so impossible.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting sort of pull that you have because that's a very specific genre that usually you're able to just bear with the input lag if you're doing something like if you want to do a capture card for playing Banjo Kazooie or something.
Yeah.
If you have a couple frames, that's fine. That's not going to destroy the experience. But obviously, rhythm games, the whole thing is timing, very precise timing. And if you can't get that because of your tech, you're not going to be able to do it. So,
yeah, I'm actually wondering if it'd be even better for me to try to emulate it. I haven't really looked into it before, but I know like I tried to play my copy of Parappa through the capture
that is
card.
peak PS2 rhythm game right there.
Yeah, that's a PS1 rhythm game.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, that's like one of the first rhythm games. But that gets to a point where it's like almost, it literally was impossible for me to progress in Parappa because like the input lag just made it impossible to get past.
Now, you also mentioned that you really enjoy other types of rhythm games, both Guitar Hero and DDR. So you're really just covering the full spectrum here of rhythm games.
Yeah, there was a while. There was like a period like early on when I was really getting into video games that I was like, oh, I
Clint
love rhythm
Smallcraw,
games.
thank you for the raid. Welcome on in, Raiders. Sorry to cut you off, Peony. Welcome on in, folks. Spider Cure raid. Yeah. Welcome on in. This is VTuber Talk. I'm Jay, your host, and I'm talking with Peony right here. We're talking some rhythm games right now, specifically ones from PS2 era. So DDR, Guitar Hero, some more indie ones like Space Channel 5. But which came first for you, DDR or Guitar Hero?
Oh, definitely DDR.
Yeah,
DDR
that one
was kind of like a craze back in like for a while, like when it was.
Heck, it still is. It's got its very loyal fan base. You'll still see DDR machines pretty reliably in arcades if they're maintained in any way. That go to a Dave and Buster's around one, or most conventions if they have a gaming hall with a bunch of arcade cabinets. That there's going to be at least a couple DDR machines, and people will be on them constantly.
Yes. I remember last time I went to like a barcade, I was fascinated with the DDR machine because I don't think it was a DDR machine. I think it was like what's the Beat Mania or something like that. Is it? It was like one of those other ones, but it didn't even have like the original game in it. It was like some kind of mod. It was called like Gummy Bear. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. And so they had like a bunch of modern songs on it that people could play. And it was really, really fascinating to see.
It is always neat to see folks take these, what I suppose sadly now can be called classic games, classic systems, and be able to mod them or make it so that you can input new songs and be able to either have it done custom and give them that fresh coat of paint. That way you aren't still playing the late 90s, early 2000s playlist. And to be fair, a lot of those still hit really well and are super nostalgic. But at the same time, you want to sometimes have something new, and it allows that community engagement and just the customization, like you were saying, of being able to actually have these different mods. That we've seen that in everything from going back to Smash Melee. You had Project M, but you have this in a lot of different rhythm games. Some actually bake it into their system nowadays, but for a lot of these older ones, folks had to hack it in basically.
Yeah. And I think it's like Well, like you mentioned, like these are games that have been around for like literally like 20 plus years, and so if you had like diehard fans that have been in that community for a long time, of course you're gonna want to like freshen it up. They could get a little stale like, eventually, so it's really cool. I thought it was super interesting.
Yeah, and sometimes you find these games end up being people's gateway into coding and development. That there's a lot of folks that wind up getting into things, whether it be game development or even VTubing. Of hey, that looks cool. I want to do a thing. The thing doesn't exist. Fine, I'll do it myself.
It's true. It's true.
Are there any of the more recent ones that you've played in terms of mods, or do you usually just go back to what is in the box, so to speak?
I don't really touch mods that much, if surprisingly. Um, my community, the Litterbugs have suggested because I play like I've been playing like Doom games on like a stream, and they always recommend me like because Doom has like a huge modding community.
Oh yeah, well the whole thing of Doom now is just what can you make it run on? It has been run on a TI-83 calculator. It's been run on a potato. It's just if it is carrying an electric current, can you get Doom to run on it? The answer is probably yes. And it's just, has someone done it yet?
Like, the original Doom was like what, one floppy disk? It can probably go on literally a microwave. It could go on anything.
I know someone's programmed it in Minecraft.
Oh, that's so cool.
I've never understood Minecraft programming. I barely played the game. I played it way back in creative mode and a little bit a couple of years ago with some friends, just casual play and whatnot. But there's this whole, just developmental community for Minecraft, which I always found super fascinating. That's you talk about your niche coding languages.
Yeah, I think that one's like really fascinating too. It's something I haven't really explored that much into, because like when I played Minecraft, it's like, oh, can I build a house? I'm good. I never really got into like like the redstone like programming stuff.
Never
I couldn't
understood
get
that.
railroads going for myself.
I love seeing videos and watching streams of people who are super skilled at it and are able to create these incredible works with it. But that's one of the things that I have not invested my own time in.
Yeah, I remember there was like a bunch of videos that I was fascinated with that were different amusement park rides done in Minecraft. I thought that one was really cool. Like really intense looking amusement park rides for like a game that's just blocks. It's so neat.
It really is fascinating how Minecraft has become a cultural phenomenon, that it is the most played game in terms of, if you go on YouTube, like most videos made. I don't know the exact stats for Twitch, but it's up there. And the fact that
it's fascinating because it's also like a relatively old game now, like at least
at this point,
10+ years, if not more.
They've had TV series done on it. Obviously, lots of merch and plushies. It's in freaking Smash Brothers. I remember playing Minecraft in early creative mode, so before they actually released it proper, that all you could do was bring up a menu of colored blocks and build things. And that was actually my primary interaction with it, because that was when I think I was a freshman in college, had to have been a freshman or sophomore. And I just didn't end up picking it up when it had the full release. But obviously it's been something I've been very aware of and sort of watched the rise of Minecraft. And it's been super cool to see, because it is a really nice sandbox game and it has all these different creative outlets. And even if it's not necessarily my cup of tea, I've really enjoyed it, and I think it has a really special place in pop culture and in gaming as a whole.
Yeah, I really do enjoy like games that let you do like a lot of crafting and customization and stuff in them. I never really got like hardcore into Minecraft specifically, but there's been like games like the zoo, not Zoo Tycoon, it's
Roller Coaster
Planet,
Tycoon?
It's like Planet Zoo and Planet Roller. Actually should get Planet Roller Coaster. I haven't played that one, but Planet Zoo I remember was like so relaxing to just like sit down and build in. Sims, I always actually like building like buildings in Sims. I find that really relaxing. Or watching people build in Sims. But like I don't know, it's something about just like you can shut your brain off, you can just like craft, and it's so relaxing and zen like.
Mhm. I've never had a lot of creativity when it comes to those types of games. That if you give me a recipe, or if I'm playing with friends and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna build this house, or we're gonna try and make this thing," I will help build that thing. I love doing that. I love just sort of mining around, getting lost, and seeing what I find. Just the very visceral reaction of, okay, normal, normal. Oh, hey, I found some flint. I'm gonna get that. Or ooh, I found diamonds, and just going around and trying to not die by creepers or skeletons as we go is sort of how I play. But then if I'm playing with a friend who has these really grand visions and is able to say, "Hey, Jay, go and get this type of thing, harvest this, and then bring it back," that I'm able to do that. And so I end up playing sort of the worker bee, but that's the role I
Yeah.
enjoy there.
I mean, that's a good role to have though, because it is like pretty useful to have like friends to help you build like your vision. I've never like I haven't really been able to jump into like Minecraft and be like, okay, this is what I want to build, and I know exactly how to tackle it. I mostly just flounder around and look around and
Mhm.
explore. I love the procedurally generated worlds. Those are always
Yeah.
just fun to like just explore, but I never got like super creative in Minecraft
Mhm.
specifically.
Looping back around to DDR, there have been a lot of different iterations over the years. Do you remember which version of DDR you played first?
Oh, I cannot remember. I remember I only had like one specific version. It had like a green case, and I had borrowed a map from a friend, and I think that might even have been their copy of their game, and that's the only version I really like played at home. A lot of the times, it's like a lot of like DDR I was exposed to was mostly like at arcades and
Mm, Aboriginal in chat. Green case on PS2 was DDR Extreme 2. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you. Oh my gosh, you're knowledgeable about your PS2 library. That's impressive.
I The first DDR game, and actually the only DDR game I ever owned, was Mario Mix for the GameCube, which for
Ah,
people who know DDR, that is baby's first DDR game. The easy mode is magnitudes easier than the easy mode on any normal
really?
DDR game. And yeah, the thing that got me was I got the game thinking, okay, I'm going to be able to do DDR to classic Mario songs. And there were a couple ones that were really, really remixed versions, but the vast majority were sort of these original compositions, and they were fine. But as someone who was really into Mario music and hoping to have that experience, I was kind of disappointed by the game.
Oh, really?
And
I
it's
am.
not to say the music was bad, it was just not what I was expecting.
Wow. I know, like for me personally, I was very limited on like what Nintendo games I was exposed to growing up. As I mentioned, I was like had a PlayStation, and that's kind of what I just kept with. I remember like I have an older sister, and she specifically had the like a classic NES and a Virtual Boy.
Oh,
And
wow.
then yeah, I remember that's probably why my eyesight's not the greatest now, because I would just play that. Um, so like there's like a lot of people have like a lot of nostalgia for like specifically like Mario and Zelda and stuff. I was like, I don't have that personally. It wasn't games I really played with as a kid. Like I did like Spyro with Jack and Daxter and stuff.
Mm, okay, yeah. So definitely the PlayStation side.
Yeah.
Um, that the first console at all that I owned was a Game Boy Color that I got for my 7th birthday, and then I got a GameCube for my 10th. I didn't
Mhm.
have a N64, played that a ton at friends' houses. Most of my friends were Nintendo fans, so I sort of grew up vicariously on those, and then, like I
Mm-mm.
said, GameCube at 10. Played NES at my cousin's house. They were not big gamers, but they had an NES, and I played the original Super Mario and never got past level 2 or 3, but I did play that on an NES several years after its release. At that point, that I was not alive when it was released on the NES.
Yeah. I think like a lot of people like specifically when I think of like Nintendo fans, they're usually like super loyal to like almost every console. And Nintendo has like a huge library of consoles when you look at it. Like they have like all their handheld systems and then like their actual like console systems. And
The
so I really
handhelds are
only
what kept them alive for
yeah.
several of those years in the middle. That they really, obviously, the NES was huge, SNES was pretty big. Things lulled a bit with the N64 and GameCube, and then the Wii took everything.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and like Nintendo has that history of like where it's almost gone under probably like 1 or 2 times. I'm not 100% sure on that, but like I know they've had like
They've had their highs and lows for sure.
Yeah, they've had like a lot of history, and so like the handheld consoles from Nintendo is really what I was only like exposed to growing up. So like the original like Game Boy Color, but then I like didn't really jump back into Nintendo until like what, DS. So it was like a huge like gaps between like consoles for me with Nintendo. So the library of Nintendo games I'm not as familiar with, and I kind of do want to go back and like visit some of those interesting older titles. Like you mentioned Banjo-Kazooie in the stream, and I was like, that's one I would really loved it. I feel like it would be right up my alley. And like let's see, like GoldenEye would be really fun to tackle, just because it's like that was like like a very formative shooter for like so many people that it's fascinating.
And it's sort of an anomaly really, because Nintendo did not do a lot of shooters. So the fact that they got, first off, GoldenEye as a brand, that was a big deal in the first place, because obviously James Bond, very iconic, but then the fact that it was just a really good game. Because goodness knows, over the years, when you're doing adaptations of well-known IP, things don't always end well. So not only was it passable, but the fact that it was so actively good, and that it was one of the few shooters on N64 just really set it apart, and that it was very fortunate to just have everything come together. And that is probably why it is so formative for a lot of folks, because if you had a N64 and didn't have like an Xbox or something, your options for shooters were basically limited to GoldenEye. That was really about it.
So I was on the opposite spectrum. It was like me, my little brother. My little brother loved Xbox, so I got exposed to like a lot of Xbox games, like Gears of War, Halo, and stuff. I didn't really play as much Halo because he like was really obsessed with Halo and wanted to play it 24/7. But so I would just take the PlayStation and go play like Japanese RPGs or something.
And you mentioned Spyro.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was definitely one of those games that it was like both me and my siblings were like obsessed with. So like that game got passed around a lot.
Yeah,
and that one also has like one of the most beautiful remasters I've seen, in like remakes I've seen in a long time. I love the art. I actually have an art book for the Spyro remake, and I played the first part of the remake on stream before. I would love to go back to that library because they did such a good job translating like the style and like feel of like the PS1 game to like high definition. Like the colors are so vibrant in it, and like the characters don't feel like the icky 2000s Spyro remake that was like a scary, like really scaly Spyro.
And because Spyro was an interesting one that I'm actually looking it up just to make sure I have my dates right, but prior to the Reignited trilogy in 2018, it went an entire decade without a game. That they had in 2008 to Legend of Spyro Dawn of the Dragon, and then just nothing. And it was really weird to see it vanish, because it was such an iconic franchise that they had basically annual installments for, well, about a decade prior to that. So to see it just evaporate was really kind of sad.
Yeah, I think it was like there was like this period where that dark period of video games where they moved away from like mascot designs and just wanted to go like super brown tone like realism shooters. Not a great like, and I don't remember like finding many of those types of shooters really appealing to me at the time. But no, I feel like we're getting back to like a point where it's like you can have it all. You can have really fun, like really pushing the limits of like realism and video game like facial feature stuff, and you can have like some perfectly like Pixar-esque little mascot guys running around and doing goofy platforming shit on your screen, and it's great, and I love it.
Mm. Are there any franchises from the PS2 era that have not come back that you're just hoping and praying might eventually have a revival?
I really would love to see like a remaster, or even a remake, actually, like then kind of like how they adapted with Spyro. Jack and Daxter. I loved Jack and Daxter so much as a kid. I was obsessed with specifically 2. I don't know what it was about Jack and Daxter 2 that was so appealing to me as a kid. I think it was because I was also playing like Grand Theft Auto, like San Andreas and 3, and it's like, well, those are very obviously not kid friendly games, but Jack and Daxter 2, they kind of were like in like that kind of edgy teen area that was way more appealing to me as opposed to like, you know, like gang violence in Grand Theft Auto. But I don't know, there's something I also found it really fascinating as a kid to see a very, very cartoony, mascotty, like platformer changed into a weird kids Grand Theft Auto, like a weird, edgy kids Grand Theft Auto. It was really, it's still fascinating to me to like think
Because
about
Grand Theft
how
Auto was
weird.
the big thing, and all right,
Yeah.
well, I can understand from a business perspective how and why that happened, because Grand Theft Auto, obviously very iconic, one of the best-selling game series of all time, and very, very beloved, but it's also a very adult game. That's not one that you're going to give to a kid that's under 17.
Mhm.
So I can see why a company would say, all right, we have this very iconic, very kid-friendly IP to work with. Let's do something that is in this vein of that type of, pseudo open world, mission based, do crazy things, whatever you want here, but keep it kid friendly because, well, there wasn't a ton of that. So I
Yeah.
don't begrudge them for trying, but I can also see how folks who had come to expect a certain type of game from that franchise, that the divergence would seem odd.
It was odd, but like I was all for it because I don't know. It just felt like it was a series that was trying to grow for a kid that at the time it felt like, oh, it's trying to grow up with me. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it was still very kid. If you go back to it, it's so cheesy and corny, and it's just I love it.
Looking at that one, that the Jack and Daxter bundle was released in 2017, but that wasn't anything new. That was, like I said, just a bundle. That the last time
Mhm.
they had a proper new one was, wow, 2009. Jack and
Yeah,
Daxter: The Lost Frontier. So it has been over a decade now since we have
yep.
had a new Jack and Daxter game. I could have sworn we'd had something new. That it still sticks out in my mind as one of those sort of evergreen franchises that I know it's not the biggest out there, but it's
Yeah.
still, it
No, I
feels like
feel
an
like
iconic enough name.
actually, let's see, it was Ratchet and Clank. I know I had like some more modern because they had like the movie that came out,
Mm-mm.
but yeah, Jack and Dexter, like it feels like it would have been like a super iconic mascot characters. You would have like a huge library of games for it, but there's actually like pretty limited. I think like there's a couple of like Daxter offshoots. There's like some race kart games because like literally every property had to have like a race
Oh
kart
yeah,
game.
everything. That was a whole subgenre of, oh, Mario Kart's a thing. Got to do Diddy Kong Racing. Got to do Crash Racing, and it, it was a simple enough system that once designers and developers figure out, all right, this is how you make a racing game, that they were simple enough of, all right, just how do we reskin it, maybe make a couple of tweaks, but by and large, the non-realistic racing genre hasn't had and doesn't really need a ton of iteration in terms of its underlying tech.
Mhm. But yeah, it's like really fun to revisit though, like older properties like that, and like it feels like it should be like something that comes back, and I'm hoping it actually is something that will come back. Like I get like with the remakes of like Crash Bandicoot, to Spyro, I think it's only a matter of time we get like Ratchet and Clank and Jack and Daxter.
It does feel like it's sort of inevitable because it's just, it was a big enough franchise that there will be the nostalgia group, but also, anytime you bring back a title like that, you're going to get a fair bit of hype. That
Hmm.
we saw it a couple weeks ago with the Nintendo Direct, that they brought back a whole bunch of really niche
Yeah.
older games, and people went nuts. And if you're able to do things in a manageable sense in terms of development, that obviously you're not going to be giving it the same type of budget that you're going to give to a, a flagship AAA title. But as long as you give it a good team and the right amount of love, you can do something that is still going to be good, even if it's not necessarily going to be God of War.
Yeah. You know what? We were talking about like mascot characters, and I just remember there's a series that I've been meaning to tackle on my my own stream that I definitely think I'm going to try to do it this year. But also like a weird, very weird mascot character, Abe from the Oddworld series. I've been wanting to check out the Oddworld series for a bit because that's got. Have you ever played those or seen anything?
I have not.
Oh
I'm
my
actually looking it
god,
up
you
right
should
now.
look up Abe because he is a fast. They're so ugly. I hate to say that, but it's like okay. Obviously, I have a very, very clear aesthetic that I'm trying to go for. Maybe it's not clear enough for everyone, but it's clear enough for me. I love like that ugly, cute style that was super popular during the 90s. Like you think about like classic Cuspo, like Nickelodeon, like you got like Arrow Monsters and Rugrats and stuff. Like, but
when I first saw you, the first thing that came to mind was Garbage Pail Kids.
Yeah, like I think a lot of people get that too. And actually, Garbage Pail Kids cards, hoping to get a nice revival. I'm hoping to get some cards to open up on stream soon because I love doing card openings. I just had Digimon card openings yesterday on stream. But yeah, I like the Garbage Pail Kid aesthetic. I like it's just like that weird, gross out kids humor that you don't really see anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like an old fogey, and I'm like, I'm not giving it up. I love it.
Hey, it makes you distinct.
Thank you. Instinct.
Very distincty.
Yeah.
And you mentioned I didn't actually know that there was going to be Garbage Pail Kids cards, but at the same time, I'm not surprised because, like you said, card games are very much, they've been a thing, but a lot more are happening now.
Been cards, but they've been collectible sticker cards. That was always their thing. They're not really necessarily tied to any games. It was always just little puns and stuff.
And I think they went out of production a while ago. That they were a thing back in the day, and I could be wrong here, but I don't think that they've been continuous printing.
Oh no, they have new sets. There's like 22 sets that came out.
Holy cow!
And they're in like a beautiful. I have it on my throne right now. It's a beautiful tin that looks like an old refrigerator, and you open it up, and you've got all these fresh new cards that you can get all the stickers from and collect. And it's cool. I love those. Like, what are they called? They call it like the bubblegum pack. That's actually not like something that was like originally from, I think maybe like the 80s, like bubblegum packs.
Oh yeah, that was a big thing. Like, do you know why they were bubblegum packs though? It was a very fun reason.
It was, you got a pack of cards and you also got like a piece of gum.
Yes, but do you know why they packaged it with gum?
Why?
Because if you packaged it with gum, it was considered a food product, and they were able to sidestep a whole bunch of taxes by not having it be what I forget the classification that it would have been without the gum, but basically it would have been seen as some other type of good. And by putting gum with it, it got classified as a food product. So it meant that certain taxes and tariffs and fees didn't have to be paid. So by actually adding something to the package, they saved a ton of money.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. That's fascinating. There's always weird, like, legal reasons for, like, a lot of people's choices and products. Like, look at, like, the big 80s boom of specifically, like, cartoons, like, targeting kids. It's because for the longest time, you couldn't, like, advertise to kids. You had to advertise to their parents. And then finally, they, like, laxed the laws a bit. And so they just started pumping out, like, television shows that were just directly connected to like toy lines, and that's where you get like a lot of those classic ones that people like are super nostalgic for and won't let go of, like He-Man and like Transformers and stuff. But that was like, oh well, of course you're not gonna let it go because it's like it's so formative to you because they purposely made it so that you wouldn't forget about it. You had to have the toy.
That was the branding thing. That was deliberate design. Oh gosh, now I'm thinking. So you mentioned that you're actually opening Digimon card packs. So that's one that I forget if they had one back in the day, but I know that there is a new one that they started it 3-ish years ago at this point. That it's
Yeah,
not hot off the presses, but it's still relatively new and
yeah,
seems to be doing well. So was Digimon something that you really grew up with? That obviously Pokemon is Pokemon, very iconic, and that
yeah.
you talk about the sort of the duality of Nintendo versus Sony and PlayStation, and the Pokemon Digimon wars of the early 2000s are very infamous for those who lived through them.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'm such a big Digimon fan, and that was like I definitely like the Pokemon versus Digimon war as a kid. It was like, oh yeah, 100% on the Digimon line. Digimon has like this very distinct style that I think obviously again they have a very very obvious taste where it was leaned heavy on like black inks and was like the whole look of Digimon was to mimic 90s American comic book art style but make it like collectible monsters for kids. And so you get like these really heavy lined artwork from the original artwork. You got like these very distinct designs, very distinct like little anime eye features and like little monster bits, and that's why you always have like a character like Were Garurumon or um let's see who was another one like a Boltmon or something, where it's like they got the black leather pants of all the belt buckles and stuff, and it's like, oh, in the pouches it's like, oh, that's from like comic book heroes from the 90s where they had to be like super edgy and like have like belts and buckles and pouches and knives everywhere and spikes and studs and like it was it's like I love the look of Digimon designs because of how weird it is. Like it's not it, like again, if it kind of fed into like that weird phase I was going through where it's like, oh, it's for kids, but it's like edgy,
Hmm.
it's cool.
Yeah, they did. They were marketing towards, all right, you're probably ages 9 to 14, and demographically, you're not going to want the super cutesy stuff, but you're also not old enough for adult stuff yet. So we got to get something that's, just edgy enough in there, but still going to be very clearly marketed for kids where it's not going to be problematic. And
Yeah,
just, you know, the I feel like there are versions of that in every generation, and it's just what type of edgy stuff happens to be coming out when you're of that target demographic age.
yeah. It's like that weird prepubescent phase of like coming from a child into a teenager, but also like you still have like very childish tastes.
And no
Honestly,
matter
I still
what
have childish tastes. I don't know if it's 100% facts, but
and no matter what era of edgy stuff you grew up in, you look back on and say, "Ooh, oh dear, that was."
yeah.
Yeah. You look back on it and realize that you have grown as a person. That
Oh
said,
yeah.
I very much subscribe to the belief of you do not need to grow up as you get older. That
Mhm.
enjoying things that you enjoyed as a kid, like hell, I still love Pokemon. I was very
Yeah.
much a Pokemon kid. Digimon just wasn't really a thing in my
Yeah.
neighborhood. So you know, but whether it be stuff like that, just video games as a whole, that fortunately, I think we are sort of past that societal standpoint of video games being only for kids and
Oh yeah.
cartoons and
No.
anime being only for kids. That unfortunately
I
we've been able to push
We are
past that.
definitely in a
But
like a great era for people that are like into just like animation and video games and stuff. I'm just like I'll be at a restaurant or something. I'll just overhear someone's conversation talking about like, oh, I play in the new Xbox game. What are you playing? Like, it's like, and it's just like your average Joe is just talking about it. It's like it's an accepted form of entertainment now. When it was like, oh, you're playing in a video game, you grow up, kid. You can't be doing that. Go watch Sopranos or something.
yeah. And part of it is just that I forget when it happened, but there was one year that eventually game sales and just revenue eclipsed film and television revenue, and it was at that point that even if you're just in business, you have to say, well, can't ignore it, that it is literally one of the biggest mediums out there. And
Yeah.
fortunately, part of it is just the fact that early on that it being a brand new medium entirely, that the only folks that made them were the ones that were older and that you had kids playing it. But now you have kids that have grown up on games, making the games, that we are now the ones that are starting to finally be running these businesses or starting these businesses. And, even if you're not necessarily seeing folks who grew up with an N64 on a board of directors yet, it's an inevitability that that's just the
Yeah.
passage of time, and that whether or not just the old guard does or doesn't change their tune, that eventually we're going to be the ones running the show, and that's just how things go.
Yeah. And I feel like you're kind of like going into this kind of like thread of thought that I've been thinking about recently a lot, and it is how the industries, Hollywood and game industries and like any media corporations, how they don't want to take risks on new properties, so they keep rehashing old properties to the point that we're at having creators on these classic titles that grew up with those titles and can really imbue like their own like feelings and like interpretations of characters, and like they have like a way different, more understanding of like and you're getting some really good stuff out of it, honestly.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's like you would like to see something fresh. It's kind of like like I want to see like something fresh and new and stuff, but I also, it's like, oh well, that's like a perfect interpretation of like some stories of like the themes of like Batman or something, like or Superman and stuff. And there was one in particular that was crossing my mind. Simpsons is like an undead husk, but apparently like the newer seasons are bomb, like they're actually becoming
starting to the pendulum swing back.
You have all of those people that grew up with like the classic Simpsons and like know like the origins of these characters and what they were
finally in the
represent.
writer's room.
Yeah, before they got overly flanderized, funny enough of a term. And now that it's like, okay, that's like they're actually making good stories again with the Simpsons. I haven't really checked out personally.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a very long time.
Yeah.
But it still continues to have high ratings. I know that they renewed it again for like 2 seasons, and for the first time it was a question of, are they going to renew? And they still did, and I assume it's still going to happen for the foreseeable future, because it's just a cultural institution, and that it is, like you said, it's a safe bet that even if it's not going to have record ratings, that it's still going to pull just consistent enough. And I feel like if they were to announce that The Simpsons was going to be going away, that you would have such a resurgence of it that I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe did like a planned fake out in a couple years, that when the ratings are perhaps a bit low, that they would say this is going to be the last season of The Simpsons, and that it becomes then a big cultural event. See the finale of The Simpsons, tune in for the last season of The Simpsons, that things will surge because you will have anybody who's had interactions with that franchise over the 30 odd years now going back because they want to see the finale, and it'll be super profitable, it'll be really big, and whether or not people like it or not, it will pull ratings. And then you wait about 5 years and then you reboot it.
Yeah, I could totally see that, because the biggest concern I think I've heard is the original cast still being used for The Simpsons, and they're not, like, Marge's voice is not great.
Because
so like
doing that scratchy voice for years and years on end, surprise, surprise, not great for your vocal cords.
And then it's just like you're rotating out voice actors that are just like no longer with us, unfortunately, or there's like. And it's like, I could totally see them doing like a whole reboot of this series, honestly, because they just refuse to let it go. But
at the same time, I could just see it going and it becoming sort of a passing of the torch, that you would recast Marge, and that that not because of controversy, but that just almost sort of like Doctor Who, of passing the torch, rotating, and in Marge's case specifically saying, all right, she's worn her voice out, frankly, and it's not what it was originally already. So recasting it, even if it's slightly different, it's already slightly different from what it was. And that's just something that people have to do. But then you also can get, imagine, it would be a really big thing, getting the next voice of Marge, or getting the next voice of Homer and Bart, and that whether it is established Hollywood talent or finding new talent that just you go out there and do this huge casting call, make a really big deal out of it.
Yeah.
We're searching for the voice of Bart, and you have it be maybe even like its own reality thing of being able to find these new voices, not only
Wow.
going back and exploring the old takes, but having these folks try new lines and just being able to make that an event unto itself. And hopefully, in doing so, also warm up folks to the idea of, all right, we know this is going to happen. And that way, it's not just sort of news drops one day and, trending on Twitter. Oh, the voice of Bart's been recast and all that. That you make it expected, you make it a thing, and you involve the current voice actors in the process.
That would be fascinating. That would be a fascinating way to take it. I am wondering though if like I'm not sure how they usually do those types of things, but especially like because like you mentioned, Simpsons is such a huge staple in the culture for such a long time. I could see them doing like a big event of it like that, but I can't really think of like any examples of them doing something like that.
Because there's so few things that are as big and as long lasting as The Simpsons that they have their options, that's for sure. And it will be interesting to see how they approach it because, like you said, inevitably, there are certain voice actors already that are sadly no longer with us, that these are, one way or another, things that they're going to have to do. And whether it be Marge's voice actor saying, all right, I just need to call it, that even if I'm still in technically bodily good health, my voice can't do this anymore. I just can't. And that they're going to have to do that unless the show is going to fold anyways. And it's then just going to be, how do they handle it? How do they want to handle it? Because they will have these options for big events that other shows just don't because they aren't these cultural touchstones. But will they take those potential options or not? That's really the big question of it all.
Yeah. But it's really something interesting to think about, though.
Yeah, and, it's a similar type of thing in the video game industry of just, we are very fortunate to have the vast majority of the really big creators still alive. That even if he's not actively involved in development, the fact that Miyamoto is still alive, that Nobuo Uematsu is still alive, it's really neat, but it also sort of has that in the back of your mind of, all right, at some point in time, we're going to be in a world without them. Like, what's it going to be like when you don't have these big established names being involved with it all?
Yeah, because I mean, video games are, in retrospect of everything, it's a pretty relatively newer media. Like, I mean, it's getting up there in age now, but like a lot of these like these juggernauts of game development, that like names that you're throwing out there, these were guys that started out like in their 20s, like, oh, how do you make a game? We'll figure it out. We'll make get a little team go together and figure out something. So yeah, it's like, and now so we're not at a point where it's like they're gonna like be gone, but like it is like what will it be like when we have to pass the torch on that, like from the old guard into like the new.
Yeah, but like you were saying, it's also really nice that we're having people who grew up with these things now being actively involved in their development, whether it be in writing for The Simpsons or helping develop new Mario games. That you mentioned how there's this very understandable tension between, all right, reboots happen all the time, and part of that is because, well, businesses don't like taking risks if they don't have to.
Yeah.
So what's going to be less risky? Let's bring back this thing. And that can be really cool, that people get really excited when there's a remake or remaster of stuff. But at the same time, you do want to see new things, and just striking that balance. And I don't know what people consider to be the balance is going to vary from person to person. So there's not going to ever be a perfect solution. And fortunately, we still do see these, not one-hit wonders, but, lightning in a bottle situations where a new IP will come out and just rock the world. That, well, you have stuff like Minecraft, where they really just innovated a genre. Or other times you'll see games that take a really established formula and just do it super, super well. And that's how things
Honestly,
go.
that's why like the indie game scene is fascinating, is because like they have to make new stuff, and it's going to be inspired by like things they loved, and and you will get like outliers like, you know, like Undertale and like Minecraft and like these really big, like huge titles that are started out as just like little one-man teams like developing games, you know. And so yeah, the indie scene is definitely where you want to be looking, because at a triple A level, they're not going to take as many risks making new stuff. If they are, it's going to be like a fresh coat of paint on like an old formula.
Hmm. Is there anything in the indie space that you've been just sort of on the lookout for? That is there a genre of game that you're like, I'm itching to play this type of game, and I don't know of a indie game in this space, but I'm looking for it, hoping to find something like it.
I'm trying to think. I'm in there is some like indie games that like there's one of the like touted best games of like the year already, even though it's literally still February. Like Pizza Tower, I just started playing that on my stream. Oh my gosh, that is a wonderful, and that's a platformer that's in the style of like a Wario game.
Yeah,
Which
I only saw that for the first time this past week. One look at it and I said, this looks like a Newgrounds game in a good way.
it's like a good game mode. It's so fascinating, and it's like there's a lot of replayability to it because they do have like ranking systems in it. So like, oh, how fast can you get through the whole map? Can you speed run this? And the animations are gorgeous. But it also still feels like an older, like like you said, a Newgrounds game, but like a really good.
Yeah, just this very cartoony Flash-like platformer. Like I said, I've only seen it this past week and only seen one stream of it, so I'm not super familiarized, but I have seen it on, I know you're actually going to be playing it later this week, and I've seen it on other people's
Yeah.
schedules as well, so it is starting to spread, and I think it's going to be one of those things, and it's going to be interesting to see just how big it gets. That one of my favorite games of the past couple of years in the indie space in particular is Vampire Survivors. And it's
Yeah.
such a simple game that it at its heart is basically a bullet hell, but I've never really enjoyed the conventional bullet hell type of games. But that one was so fun. Just the fact that you had the iteration, the fact that it was that sort of roguelike where each run is just a little bit different in how you do your builds, but also it's just so simple that
Mhm.
there the only input is directional. You don't need to bother with tapping rapidly in order to fire. It's just everything's automatically firing, and you need to survive. And it's 16, 32-bit, whatever it is. It is low. It is no polygons. It is just classic chiptune aesthetic, and it blew up. That you saw it everywhere. And there's HoloCure, which is the whole live fan game of that style, and that was just made by this very, very small team, but it took the world by storm.
Yeah, I always love like specifically like fan games are always really interesting to look at because so I think there's people that have like really good game concepts of like they put it on with like a what's a good example like them's Fighting Herds, I guess, is like one that comes to mind. And that one's like, well, obviously it's like My Little Pony artists, but they made like their own fighting game, and apparently it's supposed to be really good. I'm also thinking of like what was that game I just, oh my god, it might have slipped my mind just now, but I wanted to replay. It's originally from like early 2010s. It's like a 2013 game. I actually reinstalled it the other day, and it's like it's called Dust and Elysian Tale, and it's like a side-scrolling RPG action, kind of like you got like the combos system like you would like in DMC, but it's like a side-scroller, and that one is really interesting because it's like it has like really good animation, but also like the art style is very distinctly feels like 2000s furry art. Like
I'm looking this up right now, and yep, that is furry art.
Yeah, it's like weird. It feels like an early like web comic, like an early web comic from the 2000s.
And the line work that this is very clean for sure. That this isn't the Pizza Tower is very deliberately sloppy looking.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it is meant to look that it's not super clean,
Yeah.
and that this is very, very clean.
Yeah, and like if it actually seeing like the animations and motion, they did like a really good job of it. So I was like, I was kind of feeling nostalgic for that one. Even like I said, it's a game in like early 2010, so it's literally been 10 years since that came out. I think that would be a really good one to revisit. It does feel like Deviant Art or Fur Affinity, yeah, something like Shark Kite was saying. Uh, but like I think we're getting to that point where people are nostalgic for that style, and I can see that coming back in vogue again. Like what, like the RAR XD, like kind of like sparkle doggy stuff. I'm totally 100% sure that's gonna be coming back. We're gonna see that coming into like art style, like people's art styles, and even like video games. I can see that coming back. So I'm fascinated to see what will come of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like it's not exactly an older style or anything, but one game series that was actually announced in the recent Nintendo Direct that hasn't had a iteration in a while that I was just over the moon for was Professor Layton. That there's not been a
Yeah.
proper Professor Layton game in 10 years. And they've
Oh.
had a couple of spin-offs, but no mainline normal, just Professor Layton himself is the protagonist game, and I just adore that series. I'm guessing you mentioned that you had a DS, but that you also
Yeah.
weren't super into Nintendo growing up. So is that one that you've interacted with at all?
I actually never got to play Professor Layton, and that's one of those that looked very, very cute. So on my DS, I had some like some pretty odd choices. Like one of my favorite DS games was Hotel Dusk.
Didn't play that one, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, it's got this kind of gorgeous, sketchy style to it. But like I remember that one. I remember there was like a weird horror game I had on it where you're like crawling through a really weird for Nintendo titles. Like it feels like they felt like PS2 games to me. That's probably why I like them. But and I'm trying to think of like other ones like Elite Beat Agents. I remember really liking. That was another rhythm game. But
Do you have a favorite rhythm game? Because you've mentioned a ton, and that, like we said earlier, there's so many different types of rhythm games. That do you have either a series or just an overall style that you look at and say, "This is my favorite." That if I can get more games in this style, I'm just going to be happy.
definitely, like we mentioned earlier on, and Space Channel 5 is like my top favorite rhythm game ever. And I love the aesthetic of that, and I feel like that, like, wow, how do you describe it? It was like the 2000s, 90s, like really colorful throwbacks to like 60s like styles, which is really fascinating. Like looking at trends and like their cycles, and like we're getting to the point where it's like, oh, we have nostalgia for like the 90s, 2000s right now, but that had nostalgia for like 60s, 70s, and like so on and so forth, and it just kind of skips around like that. And then like it was like the 2010s was like what nostalgia for 80s, and that had nostalgia for, I'm not even sure like the connections there, but like it's
So
like we're getting to the like
that's your favorite art style. What is your favorite rhythm game type though?
Oh,
So
the
there's
rhythm
DDR, which is
game,
like
I would definitely
Flavors
say
of
probably
Stomping,
like
or
Guitar Hero. I'm
Guitar
actually
Hero.
really jonesing to play some Guitar Hero again, actually, and that's one of those where it was more of a like it
The
was
instrument
getting
peripheral
yeah
rhythm games.
instrument peripheral rhythm games, because you actually got to interact with like the I like just different controllers are really cool anyways. Like that's always like a neat feature is like, oh, you bought a new game but it came with like a whole freaking drum set. Like
Yeah. I remember
like Rock Band
YouTube
and
has
stuff.
suggested a video to me about the rise and fall of Guitar Hero. I have not watched it, but it is true that there was this big boom of this type of rock band instrument peripheral rhythm game, starting
Yeah,
with Guitar
it was
Hero, and
huge. It was such a
then
big
it
phenomenon.
collapsed in like 2 years.
And yeah, I kind of want to. You should link that to me because I'm fairly fascinated. I love looking up like YouTube video. Like I'm actually like I'm pretty feel like I'm almost boring in that aspect. Like when I do media nights on my channels, like I have to like restrain myself from like, let's watch a 30-minute video about the history of like Class B Cuspo or something like that. And it's like it's an interesting topic, but at the same time, it's like, is it entertaining for other people when it's like just me like listening to like an interesting topic like that? I'm not 100% sure, but those are my favorite YouTube videos. Is like media analysis and like retrospectives on like old like stuff, like nostalgic stuff like that. So oh, and lots of weird quiet like repair videos and like terrarium building videos and stuff, like just really relaxing videos. There's the different spectrums. Like I have the educational almost, but it's like educational and like a media, not really like true history kind of educational, and then like just like these weird like calming crafting videos that I like to just throw on to relax too.
I found it was from a group called Extra Credits, which I watched way back in the day. Are you familiar with them?
I don't believe I am. I might have to like look at the channel to see.
Yeah,
I have like one of those memories where it's like the names don't pop into my head, but if they like the visuals usually like come to my mind.
Yeah, that Extra Credits is a really good series that was originally on The Escapist way back in the day. They've now spun off into a whole bunch of other ones that they have like a history channel. But they started doing these pseudo animated shorts that were basically just sort of mini monologues or seminars talking about different parts of game design or game history. And like I said, they then spun off into actual historical events, and that took off and actually started to eclipse their actual gaming channel. So they then spun it off. But they always do a really good job of presenting, whether it be, like I said, these design concepts or history, and have it be very digestible, very fun, and just generally approachable, and make it good for a wide audience.
Yeah. Like, I love those types of videos, so if you ever have recommendations, slide them my way.
Yeah, I'm actually going to need to watch, because that was, it's only 14 minutes. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I thought it was like a 30 or 45-minute one.
I love going to, like, videos specifically about, like a Mandalore gaming or, like, a Somo Tool, where they're, like, one of my first games that I streamed and that I ended up dropping because it was so challenging, but I kind of really want to go back to it, was Pathologic 2. I'm really fascinated with Pathologic as a game, like just because it's like a tiny European studio that like made this like really surreal Eurojank game, and like Pathologic 2, there's so many people that like did analysis videos for it, or Pathologic, both the games actually, and I love going through like these like, hey, H Bomber guy released like a 4-hour video about like why Pathologic's pretty dope, and like I like those types of videos too.
I've never played Pathologic, and I'm actually not familiar with this one. I had to look it up, and I look at that and say, ooh, that's another creepy one.
Yeah, I like it. I'm very I do love me some creepy games. Like a Silent Hill 2 specifically is like one of my favorite games ever. It's just like the emotions that it like it gets out of you. Just, so good. Chef's kiss.
So what is Pathologic about? That I'm seeing this, sort of Silent Hill-esque town. This it's not quite Slender Man, but it's this dude that's just sort of dressed all in black with a very freaky white mask that has little pinholes for eyes and a mouth.
Let me tell you about Pathologic now. So now we're going down this rabbit hole. Pathologic is a small European. Okay, so the story is, it is a small. There's 3 characters first off that you can play through this perspectives of, but they have a suggested playing order for ease sake and also like story sake. So it is surrounded a little town that has very its culture has like very specific what's the word I'm looking for, like rituals and stuff, but and it feels like the time period's hard to set on it. It's got to be like, it almost feels like it would be like 80s, but with like people distilling like paganistic practices and stuff or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or like almost like I don't know, like maybe not even like that modern, but it feels like it's kind of bordering on modern, but also like it's still got like all this like ancient practices that the hounds people still use. And basically what happens is it's a small town, a small isolated European town that starts getting the residents start dying off, and it turns out it's a plague, and you are whichever character you choose is you have 12 days to survive and try to help as many people as possible and figure out the source of the infection. You have to monitor your vitals, like health, hunger. You have to make sure like there's like very visual aspects of the plague that's like these like miasma clouds that look like ghosts and stuff, and you have to avoid that. There's like creepy like burglars around at night, but you still have to make your rounds to make sure like I have to go get medicine to the doctor, or I have to get this sample to him. It's a lot of walking in the first game, but it's also a bit that's part of the like I guess the fun part of it is like you're running for your life basically to try to get all these things while like in a certain amount of time period. Like you have like times like, oh, if you don't do this by like before the clock strikes 12, like that's a character that dies. You're gonna get like a really bad ending. And it's some of the difficulty is spiked there, where it's like you have to manage so much of like these little activities and stuff. And there's like this very intriguing story going on in the meantime. And as mentioned before, you got 3 different characters you can play through. Each one, like the first character they recommend is like a doctor that's from the main city, and so he's not from the town. So like anybody that talks about like, oh, like go make this tincture or something with these herbs that we found in the he's like, that's nonsense. Like we're gonna use real science to approach this, because this is a very dangerous contagion that we have to like contain. And then like the next guy is like, he is a surgeon, but he was originally from the town. He knows about the practices and like he knows about what the people believe and stuff, and and I don't know. And then there's like, it's just really fast. It's such a good game though. I really recommend it. I mean, it's a jank game. It's not really, I don't know how to, it's like, it's fascinating and good, but it's also like pretty jank. Like I don't know if
Sounds
you're
really
familiar
interesting
with
that
it. Yeah, it is. It's so interesting.
that it has this. It's a lot of different factors the way you're describing it, that you have sort of the, like you said, the time management and time sensitive nature of events. So not quite Majora's Mask type of things, but just, there is a timeline going on and you need to interact and do certain things within the timeline of the game, and that there's going to be actual not event-based time, but actual, from what I'm understanding, game clock time.
Yeah. And then there's like a lot of these surreal elements, like you're mentioning like these characters that are like these tall figures and like clad in black and creepy masks and stuff, and those are kind of like NPCs that are like basically ferrying you through the storyline, and they act kind of almost like, because here's a fascinating little tidbit. This game was actually originally written as a stage play, and so like the figures that are like completely in black are like the stagehands, and then you have like your narrator type figures, and it's really cool. It's just, oh my god, I could like gush about this game so long. And the second one is a more modern adaptation. I think it came out like in 2018, maybe 2019 or something. Maybe even like 2020. I can't remember if anyone wants to correct me, but
Pathologic 2 was released in 2019.
2019. But yeah, it's like the same studio, but they got like modern graphics. They got more quality of life gameplay features. It's still brutal. They actually got a little bit of controversy when it first released because people were complaining it was too hard, and they didn't want to put sliders in to adjust difficulties, and then they finally just gave in. But so that you can like manage like different aspects, like, oh, I don't want to die immediately from starvation after 1 day, but like but they're like, that's not the original vision we had for this. This game is meant to be brutal. It's meant to be difficult. The whole point is that
that this is a difficult situation, and that in real life there are very difficult situations that for releasing in 2020 may hit a little bit too close to home for for releasing in 2019. might hit a little close to home with 2020 happening right
Mm,
after it, but
yeah, which is like really kind of interesting, like a little fact in itself, but like also like, well, very unfortunate timing on their part, but
stories about contagions and things of that nature are timeless because
yeah.
disease is just a part of life, and that,
Mhm.
there's always going to be some media that has that type of thing. So it was just sort of an inevitability that at some point in time it was gonna be a thing, and well, here we are.
Yeah. Oh, No Pretzel has like a beautiful like little Silent Hill meets Dead Rising. That's a really good way to
Ooh.
describe it. Because Dead Rising has those timing aspects in it, but it's not as goofy. Obviously, it's like it's just got like this really weird surrealness, and I feel like they even cranked it up in Pathologic too. They made it even weirder. There's like oh I mean I want to talk about it so bad, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody either. But
Oh,
there's just like new little characters they added that are just like, what the heck is that little thing? And it's so cool though. I love weird games like that. The studio has like a bunch of really just weird surreal titles that like, well, not a bunch, but like their library is usually like really weird titles that I really want to check out. And like I keep throwing the term around like Eurojank just because I've been hearing it a lot recently with like the new release of like Atomic Heart, which is like from like like that like similar like Eastern European area game developing, and like there's that like Stalker's also a really like interest. These are all series that like they have really kind of weird, surreal, just really weird little aspects to them that make them fascinating, but at the same time they're still like pretty
it's not AAA.
janky. Yeah, it's not AAA. Like there's gonna be like tons of bugs in them.
The studio for Pathologic 1 and 2 is Ice Pick Lodge, a
Hmm.
Russian game developer based in Moscow, founded in 2002. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Yes, definitely check out their library. I feel like they only have like a handful of games though. I'm like the other one I can
Yeah,
really
there's
name
like
off the top of my
5
head
or
is
so,
like,
not a ton.
yeah, like I think The Void is the one that a lot of people mention. Like that one I would love to play on stream. I don't think I can because it does have like nudity in it, but
Mm,
it's got like this uh weird aspect of like you go and you're just like collect like meeting up with a bunch of these people, and then I don't even know how to describe it. That one is incredibly weird.
mm, yeah. It's interesting that just the indie game space is not one that I'm super versed in myself.
Hmm.
One thing I've been pretty open about is I'm fortunate enough to work in the games industry by day. And as a result, it means that the number of games that I play in my off time has gone down drastically. And in this time of lots of indie games, just I hear about a lot of them and I see a lot of them watching streams, watching VTubers. That's some of how I consume my games nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, but it has admittedly created a pretty bad blind spot for me in the indie space.
Yeah. And I know there's like a lot of people that I feel like do want to touch on like those will go, and like I feel like I'm very fortunate in that I met like a lot of people like in my stream team and like everything that are we have kind of similar game tastes where we want to play like retro games, we want to play like indie titles, we want to play like really weird looking games, like and not like just to immediately jump into like the latest newest title or like an Apex or a Valorant or something like that.
Yeah.
And like it's such a like creatively nourishing space. I feel so fortunate and
Mhm.
lucky.
Also, is Puzzy even real? Thank you for the follow. And also, I missed it a while back. Goes to some DM, I'm guessing. I'm probably butchering that name, but thank you for the follow. That was a little bit back. You mentioned a stream team, which is the South Side. I've had a good
Yeah.
number of South Side folks on the show over the 2+ years now. Fantastic, fantastic group.
Yeah,
Actually
thank
had
you.
Sigrid and Bird on recently, and that, like you mentioned, there's a lot of overlap in terms of game taste. That
Hmm.
you all do really enjoy, sort of your retro classics, your offbeat games, whether it be new or old, but that you
Yeah.
all
And I
you
feel
have your
like
like-minded friends there for this type of game, definitely.
yeah, and I feel like there's definitely like even though we have like very similar tastes in games, we also have like almost like our more niche type of like immediately Cigar and Bird, I think about like military shooters and military simulations and like lots of like that types of games. And then like let's say like someone like Meat, she loves like goofy 2000s era like kind of like weird like quirky games like a Rumble Roses and like just like a very like kind of like 2000s like almost like she has like this range of like the Barbie-esque Bratz-esque types of like girly games into like more like kind of like that 2000s kind of like sexy like Japanese games coming out and stuff. I don't know, she's got like a really great range of games that she checks out on her stream. Koki, she'll do like a lot of kind of like weird janky like 90s titles like point and clicks and like I think she's playing like through Deadly Premonition right now, which is like a notoriously super janky weird Twin Peaks inspired game that I've been wanting to check out myself, and so I'm really excited she's been checking it out. And so yeah, we have like a lot of really similar tastes, but at the same time we both explore different like little corners of those. So if you definitely are into those types of games, there's literally a flavor for everybody in the South Side. So
Yeah.
Mr. Queso says Rumble game. It's like Rumble Roses. It's like it was like a bunch of girls fighting in a arena.
River City Rumble?
No, it's not River City Rumble. It's like Rumble Roses, I'm pretty sure is what it was called. But let me double check on that. Yeah,
Rumble Roses, PS2.
Rumble Roses.
Oh, was that the wrestling game?
It's like all girls.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Professional wrestling game developed by and published by Konami for PS2. There you go. The South Side has, like you said, the broader umbrella of offbeat games, but that everyone still has their own very distinct flavor and niche within a niche there. And I think that's part of why the team has done so well, because like you said, it's offbeat, so folks are going to come to you for that type of thing, and then once they find the South Side, they can really enjoy basically anyone, but then also find and sort of filter, all right, what am I in the mood for? What am I particularly interested in? And in all likelihood, they're going to find someone that is into those types of games, and all of you inherently are going to be relative rarities because these are offbeat.
Yeah, it's good to know. I'm really glad someone is saying that, because I was like, I wasn't sure 100%. Like, we just play what we want to play. We do what we want to do, basically, and that's like kind of the beauty of it. But at the same time, it was like, well, are we?
Just fell into place very nicely.
Yeah, it fell into place really nicely, and it's like it's good to hear that, like, oh, we are doing something that's like something that people are looking for and is unique, but also like not oversaturated, and it's really cool to hear that. So.
Yeah, and it's fortunate for viewers, and also, frankly, fortunate for me as a host, that one of the big things that there's, like we were saying, a whole bunch of games nowadays that just the indie scene has exploded. Plus, you already have still the AAAs are the AAAs, and they're awesome. But VTubing is very similar. That you have your really big agencies, and the talents there are incredible. But also, there's so many VTubers, and everybody has not just their own model, but really their own style. And that if someone, in my opinion, is doing it smart, that they're going to play just what they enjoy. And maybe there will be a bit of optimization of, all right, among the things I enjoy, what performs well and does well in that way. But as long as you're not bending over backwards and playing something that you actively dislike because that perhaps gets you numbers, that you all very much have a healthy mindset, I think, in just how you all approach things. And that, fortunately, like I said, that even if they are offbeat, that because it's offbeat and because it's niche, that folks will find you if they're looking for it. And since there aren't so many people playing those games anyways, it ends up being actually sort of less competitive in a business sense, which winds up just playing in your favor.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's not like we intentionally did that. We did, like I said, we just do what we want to do, but it's like, it worked out so well though. And I think like, it's really cool to be like I feel like there's like a lot of like little pockets of VTubers that like they like you were saying, there's like, oh, they think about it too over analytically. It's like, okay, I'm only gonna play with like, oh, I know this has got a huge fan base, I can get a lot of viewers for that. But it's like, if you want to enjoy streaming in a long-term fashion, you just do what you're comfortable with and what you enjoy, and the people that will find you that enjoy that kind of stuff, and you'll just have more fun in the whole entire journey of streaming from that, because you're not just like forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do.
Who are the most successful streamers in the really popular game spheres? Who are the best, Valorant streamers, the best Fortnite streamers? Folks that just like Valorant
really
and Fortnite.
It's just their passion. They
love
games. It's like, how can you like compete with someone that's actually very passionate and literally wants to be playing like a certain game 24/7 because it's like they love that game. How can you compete with that if you're just looking at it like, oh, this is what's going to get me numbers fast? Like,
yeah. And if you happen to just be super passionate about a game that is very, very popular, hey,
oh yeah,
all the better. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and actually it would be actually probably really good for you, because like that's another thing. If you're really passionate about a game and you're putting the time and effort and you're gonna get good at that game, and people want to see people that are good at certain games, and so that's not like I'm not saying like, oh, you should only play like these certain games. It's like, if you want to play Apex, if you want to play Minecraft because that's what you're passionate about, do it, because like that will come through in your streaming, and that's really what attracts people to your streams. It's either your personality or your gameplay ability.
And the folks that are able to really transcend are the ones that have both.
Yeah. Those lucky guys.
Yeah. Just generally speaking, that there are folks that make their brand, all right, I'm a bit of a rage gamer, and that you're going to hear me yell at the game. But at the same time, the folks that do that, you can tell they're having fun when they're yelling, that they're not actually, frustrated at the game, that they're going to really overreact and, put on a bit of a show, and that's great. And it's super fun to watch a really well-practiced rage gamer put on a rage performance. But folks can also tell when you're just not having a good time.
Yeah. Or like the like I mentioned earlier on the stream, like the whole YouTubing sphere of reactions to scary games, like that's like it's better if the person and actually enjoys being scared. Like, it's being scared is fun. Like, I love horror genres myself, like not only in video games but like in videos and like stories and telling and such. But so like if you enjoy that and you're able to reflect like genuine reactions, and like that's what draws people in.
When it comes to some of the more perhaps mainstream games, you mentioned that you're really into team battle royale games. And obviously battle royale is it's weird to say, but it's still a relatively new genre.
Yeah, it is kind of fascinating. I remember playing like old school PUBG, like getting into that, but like I wanted to get into Apex when it first came out. It always crashed my PC, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up, yeah. So it's like, and I feel like if I were to play it now, it's like, well, I probably would have fun, but it would also be like I'd be competing with like people that have literally been playing it for years and are like super good at it. But I do like casual battle royals. Like I'll play Fortnite on my free time. Like I love Fortnite. Like no joke. One of my favorites though, and that I will occasionally stream, but I haven't really been doing it often recently. But Hunt Showdown, that kind of is like in the battle royale sphere, but it's like more of a slow paced one, and that one's really fun. But I just like enjoy shooters a lot recently, so.
I'm absolute garbage at shooters, and part of this, tying back into the conversation from earlier, that since I played a lot of Nintendo consoles growing up, and Nintendo just didn't have a lot of shooters, it wasn't something I grew up with, and like you were saying, that there is now sort of this barrier to entry, the skill curve when you're playing these games online is very steep, because there's a lot of folks that have grown up with these games or just put in the hours to get really good. And if you're good at shooter games, you can generally adapt those skills. And it is a learned skill. That nobody is born knowing how to play a shooter game, but
Yeah.
that is just one, stat, so to speak, that I never invested any time or skill points in. So I'm garbage at shooters across the board. And as a result, that sort of makes me averse to the genre as a whole because, well, I'm not good. And to be fair, it is now sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, if I want to get good, I should just actually pick up a
Yeah.
game and practice. And I acknowledge that's how I would do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a bunch of other games that I enjoy, and I don't play as many games as I used to for the reasons I mentioned earlier. So I still, as of yet, have not actually really just hunkered down and tried to get good or at least passable at shooter games. And that's definitely my biggest deficiency as a gamer. That I'm good at puzzle games. I'm good at platformers and strategy and all these different types of things. And I enjoy watching people who are skilled at shooters. That seeing someone be able to just go nuts, whether it be in Halo, Team Fortress, Call of Duty, what have you. That I don't dislike the games fundamentally. I'm just bad at them.
Yeah. Like I don't believe I'm like an amazing shooter player, to be honest. Like, but like I like feel like I'm going through something similar to what you're going through in that with another genre, like fighting games in particular. I always have really admired fighting game players. I like watching fighting game players. I like watching fighting games. I am complete garbage at fighting games. Like I don't know why I can't wrap my head around like, and it's not like a reaction thing either. Like I feel like actually the barrier for shooters versus fighting games, like the fighting game, like your skills don't really fall off on fighting because it's all knowledge based. Like shooters does have like a little bit of like you have to have like a certain amount of reaction time that can deteriorate as you get older. Is like one thing that people are always concerned. Like if you look at like a
If you're
Call
looking
of
at the
Duty
highest
or
levels
major,
of
yeah,
play,
at the
yeah.
highest level of playing, yeah, like I know there was like an anomaly with like one of the best Call of Duty like players, like competitive players, like, oh, he hit 30, is he gonna like retire now and stuff? And it's like he's only 30.
You have
But
that
like
question, even for basketball, football, what have you. Just to,
Mhm.
it's weird to see it for the first time
Yeah.
in competitive esports.
But you
But
don't really see that often in the fighting game sphere, which is really
Mhm.
fascinating. Like the big names like that have been around for literally 20 years, like Daigo and like a lot of these like big names, they're still gonna kick the shit out of you in these games. They're
Yeah.
like they're not they, if anything, they're like probably like still hard as hell to fight, like harder than like a lot of like newer players, just because it's like they have like the muscle memory, they have the knowledge, they know how to react to things. And it's like I don't think like obviously I'm never gonna be at that level. I don't think I'll be at that level of competitive play for any type of genre. But like like I really want to play like Guilty Gear, and I want to like I just bought Tekken 7 because I kind of want to play
Well,
the
Street
new
Fighter
Tekken.
6 is coming out soon,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that it's going to be a new installment. So that is going to be one of the best times to get in on it. And that,
it definitely is.
from
And
what
then
I
like
understand, they also did something. I forget the exact system for it, but that they have simplified inputs and that you can still do the full, quarter circle input and everything to Hadoken and all that jazz, but that for certain things that they have made it so there is now just single button inputs, and that obviously when it comes to the competitive scene, they're still going to have the high complication stuff, but that they've lowered that barrier to entry for folks who want to play it casually.
Yeah. You like definitely like if you know anything about the Guilty Gear series of fighting games, those have always like I remember playing like one of those on like back in the day on PS2, like a Guilty Gear or X or something like that. I can't remember. It had ABBA in it, but and the OG Bridget. I was so happy they brought Bridget back. But like that those games, those were notorious for being like super hard anime 2D fighters. And now like the new Strive, like they did simplify it a lot. They simplified a lot of characters. Like the two new characters are actually probably like the two simplest characters in the game ever, and they're still like super strong. Like Nagoriyuki is like, I know like he's like one of the staples of the game, like headers, like because he's got an amazing iconic look. Like he's one of the best looking characters from Guilty Gear in my opinion. And I think he embodies the Guilty Gear Strive so well because like I think people approached it like they didn't know how to play him originally when he first came out, and they were like, oh, he's super hard and he seems so weak. And then it turns out, no, you just were playing him wrong. He's incredibly easy, and he's freaking busted too. He's like, it's always fascinating. Like I love hearing about like fighting game like culture and stuff. It's always really
fighting game
fascinating.
metas, because of how they work, is frankly, I might say something controversial here. I would argue that fighting game metas are more complex than shooter metas, simply because the number of characters is different. That generally speaking, that there are a couple games where you'll have different classes, different specialties, and some different builds and weapons you can use. But in general, fundamental strategy will persist in shooters games.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to kill the opposing team, and that there's different ways you can go about that. But in fighting games, not only are the inputs different, that in a shooter game, it's always the trigger button to shoot, and that's going to be it regardless of your build. But when you're playing something like Guilty Gear or Street Fighter, that when you have a different character, all the inputs are going to be different. The type of moves are going to be different. The reach, the reaction time, all these different things. So it ends up being a much more complex knowledge base.
Yeah, and I think like I'm so attracted to that, like like the scene, and like you were just talking about like Street Fighter 6. Like I love hearing like, and I have like a lot of friends that are actually really into fighting games. I think that's also another reason like why I'm attracted to it, is because it's like I hear people that are so passionate about it and talk about it. And oh, there's an amazing video. I'll go back to the Street Fighter 6 little line of thought in a moment, but there's an amazing video about like specifically Tekken. I have some friends that play Tekken, and apparently there was a secret like culture of like Tekken players in Pakistan of all places. Like there is like some really major players in Pakistan, and like I think Korea is like usually like the biggest area for Tekken players, specifically like usually the biggest player I think are from Korea, and then Japan, and then the US. But some Pakistani players just came out of nowhere and like busting through tournaments, and there's like a really really good video. If I can find it, I'll link it to you. And actually I could leave, yeah. But it was like talking about like I think his name is Ari something, and he's like a Pakistani player that like he had like a huge difficult time getting from his home country to Japan Evo, and it's just like a very very good hero story of like how he had to go through all this like to get to the tournament to prove like Pakistani Tekken is like some of the best in the world, because no one ever even
I've
knew
heard
they
of stuff like
existed.
that in other fighting games, where it's just that you have regional styles, that just the local tournaments and the high level folks there that you're going to play, if you're in that scene, in that circuit, will have certain metas and certain styles. And then it gets a bit more mixed and difficult when you have nationals or world championships or something. But you then have these smaller markets, whether it be, Central America or a smaller European country. And there have been stories, like even in Magic the Gathering, where you'll have in tabletop card games, these folks that sort of, like you said, come out of nowhere and have their own take on the meta, or a different strategy that isn't mainstream in the high population areas. And then also might have difficulty of, okay, travel to wherever these big tournaments are, end up being more difficult and frankly just more costly, because either they're farther away, or that getting flights are not going to be direct and more expensive. And you can really get, like you said, those sort of Cinderella feel-good stories. So that's something that's really really fun to see whenever you see them.
I found the specific video. It's Arslan Ash, actually, from Pakistan. He's a Tekken 7 professional player, and his story is fascinating. I really would have had to link that to you in the Discord, but like definitely check that video, and check that story out. I feel like I might have even showed you guys this, like the litter bugs, the story, like the specific video before, because I just love the story so much. And it's like a good example of like just like there's just so many cool stories that come out of like fighting game tournaments and cultures and stuff. It's always really fun to like listen into and like hear about, or like research.
Yeah, because you have these really big communities, and that they're obviously, communities are built of what? Individuals, and that you get these cool stories, whether it be folks that have played for a really long time and, have that road to a big championship, or just like you're saying, certain niche strategies, or even communities as a whole misunderstanding certain new designs and thinking, all right, this isn't good, this isn't competitive viable, and then
Hmm.
someone breaks the meta and realizes, oh wait, this is actually the biggest thing in the game, and we'll
Yeah.
just run the table at a tournament.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's always cool to hear about that, like characters that like people like underappreciate and stuff. Like Tekken also has like one of those where it's like like Panda. Someone won a tournament with Panda, which was thought to be like literally the worst character in Tekken. Um, like I mentioned, it's like Guilty Gear Strive. Like Nagori Yuki was super underlooked when he first came out, but he's really really good. And like it's always cool to see like how the meta evolves in like fighting games.
Absolutely. And VTuber Xanthorus, thank you for the raid. Welcome on in, Raiders, and AKA Pseudonym, thank you for the follow.
Welcome, welcome.
Yeah. Uh, Hopping back to TCGs for a little bit, you mentioned earlier that you opened some Digimon cards. Do you play the TCG or just collect?
I was talking about this yesterday, like while I mostly collect. I honestly only collect right now. I have so many cards that I do want to build some decks though, and I want to try to get into it. Finding a local scene for Digimon is a little tricky. It is like only like it's a pretty new game, but at the same time, it like came out on an unfortunate time. Like it literally like released in 2020,
Yeah.
so like it didn't get that chance to really develop like a local scenes and like card shops or something like events or anything that people could go to, which is like honestly that's one of the biggest appeal to like a lot of card games for people is like if you look at like the Magic scene, it's like the community and everything. People love being able to like go out and like hang out with their friends and talk about their cards and trade and everything. And I'm hoping Digimon gets that chance, but I don't know. I have to really look into it in my local card scene to see if something. I'm hoping actually they'll release a online version. I know like that was a
Yeah.
big thing for Yu-Gi-Oh recently. Like
Hmm.
people just were out coming out the woodworks playing Yu-Gi-Oh on
Oh,
streams and
absolutely.
stuff.
Seeing
Yeah.
Master Duel released, I think it just had its first anniversary a couple
Oh
weeks ago.
really?
That it was a huge thing, and just you're very, very correct that having a online client to be able to play it, and especially these past couple years, is really, really big, and that it gives folks who might not have a big local scene a chance to be able to play because, well, nobody at my LGS, but I can always find folks online.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, and so I'm really hoping that like that's eventually because apparently there is an online client that they only use for tournaments, and I don't think they just haven't adapted it to like a public
They haven't scaled it.
format.
Yeah.
Yeah, they need to scale it. So eventually we'll get that, and then like you have to think about like cards going into like print, but you have to be able to like get them into like the formats for online and everything. So I mean, it is a big process, so I understand why it's going to take a while, but hopefully, hopefully it comes to. I still love the cardboard though, and Digimon has like some really nice cards. I'm just gonna say, like they got some pretty thick card stock and really nice art, and then so it's still a joy to collect. Like I enjoy it, like having like all the art on display, and there's particular Digimon characters I'm looking for that I'm like I have to get like this version and this version because I want to display them. Like I don't even want to use them for deck building. I just want to display them with the rest of my Digimon like collectibles. So like I really enjoy it so far, like the card game. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to open more packs on the stream too. Speaking of Digimon, there is a game that's supposed to be coming out this week. Actually, it's not a new one; it's a re-release. It's Digimon World Next Order, and it's basically like the true sequel to the OG Digimon World game that was on PlayStation 1. It was like one of my favorites, and but it came out in like 2016, and it's finally getting a PC release after all this time because it was originally like a PS Vita game or something like that, I think.
Oh boy, the PS Vita.
Yeah. like a weirdly PS Vita is like one of those game consoles that also had like a really kind of long history, even though like I never got to experience it. But I had like a way longer lifespan in like Japan. Like the games just kept coming out that for it for a long time. I wonder if like I'm not 100% sure like where it's at now, but
Well, it is starting to get late, and it feels like we've just scratched the surface of a lot of things that
yeah.
there's so much to you, Peony, that
Thank
one
you.
thing when we spoke a while back, you mentioned you're a poker dealer. You were a poker dealer for a time. Like,
Yeah.
that's super
Oh yeah,
cool.
we
I
didn't
never,
even get into
we didn't
that
even
part.
talk
I
about
totally
poker dealing.
we didn't even talk about the poker
It
dealing
happens.
stuff.
It happens. No, it
Yeah.
was super cool just getting lost in some old games and just, concepts of The Simpsons and, remakes and retro and everything like that. That this was a
Yeah.
super, super fun deep dive. But folks, if you are tuning in and for some reason aren't already following Peony, please be sure to do so. I am giving her a shout out there. We have the very shiny brand new tagging in the title of the stream that was just
that's
added
such
this
a
week
cool
on Twitch. So
feature.
yeah, you're the first guest of Vtuber Talk to be
Thank
actually,
you.
linked in this system. So that's super fun. And we obviously have the links here at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on YouTube after the fact, it'll be in the description of the video. And hi, YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz.
Thank you
But
so much for having me, Jared. I had such a blast. It's always a joy to talk with you, and
aw,
like especially like we get to talk about my favorite types of topics. So
yeah, the feeling is absolutely mutual, Peony. And I have just two last questions that I ask all my guests. One is, do you have any goals for 2023 that, like you said, it's still pretty early in the year, that we're just getting it to the later part of February. So whether it be a project that you're hoping to get out the door or something that you're hoping to get in terms of whether it's, metrics or just things that you want to try that are new and different. Do you have any goals for the year?
yes, of course. If anyone doesn't know, I am actually an artist, and I do my own model art.
We
and
didn't get to
rigging.
any of the art.
Yeah, we didn't even get to that part. I did my own model. I did my own rigging. I last year I wasn't able to get to it, and like definitely this year my goal is to start on Peony 2.0. So I that might even be something I feature on stream. I finally decided that it is going to be something I feature on stream. I originally was like, I should keep it a secret and try to work it on my own time, but honestly it'd be more time efficient and also very educational if I showed people like the process of character design, of how to like make your model, how to draw it, how to decide on like the branding and like the directions you want, and then also going through the rigging process. And I think that would be just fun to like explore and like have the input from my litter bugs on like what they want to see from me, as well as like and give them like get feedback directly from them while we're working on it. So that's the big goal of this year is Peony 2.0. We'll see how that goes along though. And honestly, the only other goal, I don't want to like get into like, oh, I want to get certain numbers and I want to get like these certain badges on my Twitch and stuff. Like I tried to do that last year and it just like mentally drained me, and it's like I needed to like reverse it. I love streaming. I want to enjoy streaming. And so like my goals are going to be like, what can I do for that will keep me enjoying and like interacting with my fans. And like so one of the other things is just streaming more consistently. I want to make sure it's like something I have a regular schedule for, which I feel like something super important for every streamer is like try to come up with like a good regular schedule. Even if it's like you can only stream once a week, just make sure you try to do it like around the same time of day and the same day, so that you're able to have people that like know that like, oh, it's 5 o'clock on a Sunday, it's Peony time. But I don't stream on 5 o'clock. Don't come to my channel at 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
You're not gonna find
nothing's
me.
gonna happen on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then the last question, it's one I ask all my guests: what does being a VTuber mean to you? And that's not what does it mean to be a VTuber, but different people get different things from VTubing. I've had folks say, VTubing lets me get in touch with my inner child. It lets me be someone that I can't be in real life. I've had other folks say it is a tool in my toolbox as an actor. It's a mask that I wear, and it lets me do fun, crazy things that I wouldn't be able to do as a face cam streamer, but I don't necessarily identify with my model on a super deep level. And both of those answers are totally valid, and that anything beyond in between, there is no one right way to be a VTuber. But for you, Peony, what does being a VTuber mean to you?
it's definitely an expression of creativity for me. Like, I love being able to work on like a lot of art aspects for the stream. I love interacting with other artists and like forming like communities with like a lot of my team members and my viewer base. And it's something that's like, it's just an expression of myself, you know? Like, I'm doing stuff that like I feel reflects me perfectly. Like, I'm just like a little stinker, and I just want to share that with the world. And I'm hoping people appreciate that, like this vibe that I got going on, where it's like you want like a very particular little stinker. That's me, and like I have like these really particular tastes, like these really weird, creepy, like boomer tastes, but but like at least I'm hoping you vibe with that, because like I'm enjoying myself. I want you to
Well, I
too.
think you are definitely doing it right, Peony. And I always ask that question last because one, it helps sort of put a bow on things, but also while I never know how someone is going to answer that question, the answers always make sense. And even after just a couple hours of talking, that it all really lines up. That, like you said, one, you're being yourself. We had a bit of a chat earlier about just, streaming and do stuff that you like, but also
Yeah.
your particular styles, your niche interests, being these offbeat, silly games that might not be AAA, but still have this super fun, unique charm to them. Just everything that you do is definitely in that vein and fits with your answer. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your stories, just getting you to be able to rant on Neverhood, but also
Yeah.
just all the different games, even if there were things we didn't get to. It was so
I
much
know,
fun.
I know. Yeah, chat. You only got the scratch and sniff portion of of Peony. You gotta come to the channel, get a big deep whiff of what I have to offer, because I will go on and about like all kinds of weird, just random shit like this all the time, and I'm always down to talk. So, yes, thank you again, Jay. I had so much fun today.
The pleasure is all mine. Do you have anyone you'd like us to raid?
Ooh, let me see who's online. We actually have
Well,
some
while
team
she
members.
checks on that, folks, once again, I'm Jay. This is VTuber Talk. This is actually episode number 95. I'm having to start planning for episode 100 now. Um, you can
Oh,
follow me here on Twitch and on Twitter. It's just VTuber Talk in both places. Peony mentioned having regular stream times. Don't do what I do, because I don't have regular stream times. I just schedule around the guests, and that's something I accept and wouldn't have it any other way. But I sadly cannot say, hey, 5 o'clock on a Sunday, it's VTuber Talk time. That pay attention on Twitter or follow
Mhm.
here on Twitch, and you'll get those notifications. But
Yeah. My
yeah,
regular times are Monday through Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. And then I am trying to get more community nights going on our Southside Discord around 11 p.m. on Thursday nights. It's usually we're watching old school anime, we're watching horror movies. We're always having a good time over there, and I always look forward to it every week, and I want to make sure it's something I can keep maintaining every week. So
absolutely. Alrighty, you have a raid target for us?
yeah, let's go visit my buddy Crimbo.
Hey, Crimbo.
He's doing some art.
Awesome. Okay, well, folks, be sure to spam some Peony emotes. Let them know that Peony sent you. We're going to be heading on out. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you were lurking, chatting, if you came in from one of the raids, thank you so much for sticking around. Peony, again, thank you. This was so much fun. I really appreciate you stopping by. So, again, everybody, I'm Jay. This is VTuber Talk. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.
Goodbye.